Gentlemen at the Buxus. And I need to give you an overall intro first on the Buxus because there's a little bit to understand about them. Hold on, I'm not there yet. Calm down. Remember, I'm going to give you an overall introduction. Right, when the, I don't know if you know that Sheridan Nurseries is celebrating 100 years this year. Sheridan Nurseries happens to be one of the oldest nurseries in Canada, continuous long-running nurseries, and it happens to be English-based. A lot of our nurseries are Dutch, but the English were here before the Dutch, right? The Dutch are just a little smarter at making money, in some ways. So, going back to that English nursery, as an example, when it started, it had a market because Canada was principally settled by the English, although the French may argue that they wanted to introduce English-style plants from home. And they ran into a couple of problems, and two of the plant groups that we're going to talk about today relate to that kind of historical early settling. One is the boxwood, the other is the holly. Those are both common English plants, and both experienced difficulties growing here in Ontario. So Sheridan was one of the pioneers in introducing an alternative form of boxwood. They wanted to be able to grow Buxus sempervirens, which is on your list, number 177, but it is marginally hardy even in this climatic zone. When you go to Niagara, maybe you could grow it, but we're right on the edge here. We actually have 3 plants of Buxus sempervirens at the Cuddy Gardens in the patio area, so they've got a brick wall around them, and they've survived. Outside of that, I've planted probably another 12 to 15 Buxus sempervirens over the years, even down in the woodland garden, and they've all failed. So that will give you an indication of microclimates and the hardiness of that particular species. So Sheridan Nurseries went to work and they developed a series of cultivars. This is not one of them, but we'll see one of their other ones today. So they came up with these tough hybrid boxwoods, right, that have a mixed parentage. And the one that we're looking at here is number 175, Buxus sinica variety Insularis Pincushion. And Sheridan developed Green Mountain, and I think Green Velvet, the 176s, that we'll look at it, and they're in the back garden there. But, so they looked at the hardier boxwoods, and they looked at crossing them, etc., and then looked at selection, and came up with these cultivars. So what we've got here is we've got a boxwood that goes back to some of its parental roots, and we can still see that at this time of year, because it's got this rusty color to it. That tells us that somewhere in the breeding of this plant, it's got Buxus microphylla variety Chloriana in its parentage, and the Korean boxwood was known for turning a rusty color in the autumn to winter. That was considered not a very desirable characteristic, so when you look at some of the other cultivars that we have, you'll see some change. This one is called Pincushion. And the name is quite obvious, although these have been clipped, and they are clipped each spring. But pincushion, as the name implies, and I don't know if you're familiar with what a pincushion is, it's something you stick, pins in. So it's round, and you stick pins in, so it's got all these points coming off of it. Well, when we look at a sample over here that's not kind of squashed into the snow, you'll see that it produces these little branches that come out like pins, and it's slow growing. It's going to be one of the slowest growing cultivars that's commonly in the trade. We're going to look at Morris Midget, and Morris Midget is much slower than this, but it's not very, very common. So this one is a fairly common one, but it's the slower growing and the more dwarf of the boxwoods. Just to give you an indication, I grew up in southern England. The boxwood that I grew up with were 15 feet tall, 20 feet tall. You can find some of the sinicas, Green Mountains here, maybe 8 or 10 feet tall, and that's really quite big. But they'll never reach the height of Buxus sempervirens. Anybody carve here? carvers? No carvers? Whitlows? Okay. Well, you go to Lee Valley, you can buy what they call boxwood planks. That's chunks of Buxus sempervirens wood for carving. And it's very good for carving, fine detail, because it's very hard and it's slow growing, very slow growing, right? So the cells are very, very close together. And a lot of the early furniture would have, and boxwood is very light colored wood, they would use to inlay into the furniture. So veneers and marquetry and such, putting in the detail. So they would use boxwood wood. But you can go to Lee Valley and you can buy chunks of English boxwood, called boxwood planks for carving and turning, etc. Yes?
What did you say the species was again?
Label's wrong.
Okay.
Yeah, go to the list because this, again, is a fairly recent name change, right? That label was probably put in here, I don't know, 10, 12 years ago. Yeah. So go with what's on here. Cultivar is still good, but, and you will see it listed as that name. So you may not see it listed as these names here, but these are the most current. So where I've not included it in brackets, use the names that I've given. Right, where I've included in brackets, you can use either or. Okay? Questions? Everybody knows what this is, right? No? Tulip tree. Liriodendron. Easiest tree to identify at this time of year. Look at the buds. They look like mittens. Right? The terminal buds look like mittens. And you can see these actually have the flowers still on them, or the seed capsules from where the flowers were. So that's really, really quite obvious. This was quite spectacular when it was in flower. However, you can tell that it's a variegated cultivar. How can I tell that this is a variegated cultivar? Potentially. How do I know that this is other than...
Other than your you?
I had it planted here, but no, I could look at this somewhere else and say, I think this could be a variegated cultivar. Any clues? So if it's variegated, it's going to have less what?
Leaves.
Chlorophyll.
Chlorophyll. If it has less chlorophyll, it's going to be slightly less vigorous. So vigor is going to affect everything, right? I look at the flower or the seed capsules on this. They're half the size of what they should be. So either the tree's under stress or there's something else. And if I look at this, look at the terminal growth, the tree's not under stress. The branches are good, healthy, buds are plump, full, etc. So that leads me to conclude that why are the flowers smaller? Well, potentially it could be a variegated cultivar or an off-colored cultivar, something with less chlorophyll. That's why I get $150 an hour for consulting.